Jacksonville Jaguars fans, welcome into a Victory Monday edition of the show. Happy December. Can you believe we're already here? 12 games in to the Jacksonville Jaguars 2025 season, and your Jaguars are sitting at 8-4 on top of the division, AFC South, third place in the AFC. Pretty unbelievable. Who would have thought we'd be here right now? Not me. So, Jaguars top takeaways from a dismantling of the Titans yesterday. We're going to get into it right here, right now. Really appreciate you being here. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. You can also check out genjag.com, pick up some new Duval gear. We do have our Cyber Monday / Victory Monday deal going on right now. It's the last day for 40% off everything on the website. Check it out. Help support the channel. Look good while doing it. Save some cash on it today. genjag.com. Code Duval, DUUUVAL, for 40% off everything. So, getting into this Jaguars game again, they won 25-3. The Colts lost to the Texans. So the Jaguars and the Colts both sit at 8-4. And the Jaguars have the tiebreaker with the winning percentage against common opponents right now, because the first two tiebreakers, head-to-head and division record, are both tied. They haven't played each other yet, and they both have the same division record. So it goes to the wins against common opponents. And the Jaguars beat the Chiefs while the Colts fell to the Chiefs. So that's where you're at right now. Jaguars are ahead of the Colts in the division standings, even with the tied record, and they play each other this upcoming week. We're going to talk about that quite a bit coming up. But right now, talking about my top takeaways from the Jaguars' actual win against the Titans, 25-3, where really it just didn't feel like a game. For a lot of the game, it felt like it was just far out of reach, and we've seen the Jaguars fall apart in that situation before. They didn't in this game. The Jaguars defense simply was not tested throughout this game by the Titans offense. Just wasn't. So I think that's where you're at, and that's a good sign for sure, but it's not. I mean, the Titans offense, nothing to write home about either. So they did what they should have done against a Titans offense that really struggles. But looking at my top takeaways, I think that the Jaguars' passing game right now might just be a problem for most opponents down the stretch. I really do. Like, shout out to Jacoby Myers. Since joining the team, 4 games, 18 catches on 21 targets, 85% catch rate when targeted by Trevor Lawrence is insane. He now has 2 touchdowns, 245 yards, I believe. There's just a lot that this team can do now that they have a Jacoby Myers type presence, and Brian Thomas Jr. is back on the field. And when you look at what Jacoby can do, it's pretty much everything. I mean, he blocks his butt off, which is huge. He can catch the contested targets. He can get open as well. There's also opportunities and times where you just see Liam Cohen scheming him and other players open. So he can kind of win in a lot of different ways. He's not that speedster, but he has a down the field threat thanks to, again, his ability to be where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there, his size, length, and really strong hands and physicality. And so he opens up a lot of the offense, makes Trevor feel a lot more comfortable. You talk about getting Britton Strange back as well. I didn't think he looked 100% for a lot of this game from an explosiveness and physicality standpoint. There were some highs and lows, but still such a huge addition back for the Jaguars, just with reliable hands. And then Brian Thomas Jr. back as well, having a good performance. And he's another player. It's like you're stacking all these pieces. Jacoby with the consistency and versatility to do almost everything. Brian Thomas Jr. with that speed that absolutely kills and building some confidence. And, great job blocking downfield on the Jacoby Myers 50-yard catch and run by Brian Thomas Jr., pancaking a defender. You love to see that effort from him. One early on the outside, and then also kind of a medium over route, having to go over the middle of the field. It wasn't like he was running into a defender, but winning in some different ways and showing effort is huge. Obviously, a big piece of this is Parker Washington, and you'd love to get him back. He suffered a hip injury. Don't know the timeline, don't know how that's going to play out. You're hopeful for Parker to be able to get back, because if you can have Trevor Lawrence ripping it as he's been doing recently, with Jacoby, Parker, Brian Thomas Jr., Brenton Strange, and then the ancillary pieces as well that they have. Tim Patrick being one of them, who I thought kind of took a step in the right direction after having a disappointing outing against the Cardinals the week before. I think you're in a pretty good spot. Combined with the Jaguars' run game, which is usually very strong, wasn't very great against the Titans in this one, but the Titans have some beasts up front, and I think that the Titans said, "Look, you're not going to run the ball on us," and the Jaguars said, "Okay, well, we'll throw it on you." And so sometimes just the way games kind of flow, it ends up being, we're going to lean more on the pass or more on the run, and they had to lean more on the pass in this one, and they had some incredible moments in that passing game. Still wasn't consistent enough, but again, you're dealing with injuries at, wide receiver. You're dealing with injuries as well up front on the offensive line, and injuries are going to be key to follow, and that's kind of my second takeaway. You have obviously Eric Armstead, who suffered a hand injury during the week last week. Liam Cohen said after the game they're hopeful he can be back. Trayvon Walker has been dealing with a knee. He hasn't practiced in a couple weeks. You're hopeful he can get back because you're going up against a Colts team that's going to want to lean on the run, lean on their offensive line. Jonathan Taylor, the Jaguars have the best run defense in football, and that was one of the things I brought up yesterday early on against the Titans. The Jaguars' run defense kind of was faltering. It did get cleaned up. You don't want to have an opening drive where you do allow the run because against a team like the Colts, that can kind of snowball. But they did clean it up, and they've been the best run defense in the NFL against opposing running backs for a lot of the year. But for that to really kind of be maximized, that run defense and that effort, you really need Trayvon and Armstead out there. Yes, I like Danny Strigo and what he can bring, and Josh Hines-Allen is a great player, but you need your two of your top three defensive linemen to really be as effective as you can be against the Colts, a team that wants to get downhill but also stretch you out a little bit. And Jonathan Taylor, just such a talented back in so many ways. So that's going to be huge to monitor. You also have the Parker Washington hip injury, as I mentioned, and then Walker Little sustained a concussion in this game. Patrick McCary didn't play in this one with a concussion protocol. And Chuma Edoga didn't play either with an injury. So you've got some offensive line injuries to keep an eye on. I mean, shout out to Cole Van Lanen and Wyatt Milam for coming in and holding down the fort. Cole Van Lanen, I think, has played almost every position on the offensive line for the Jaguars this year outside of center, I think. But that's great to see him being able to come in and have some success. But injuries are going to be critical to follow for the Jaguars this week. And then you also have the Colts dealing with, the Daniel Jones fractured fibula. Apparently it's fine, but that sounds scary to me. I know they wouldn't be putting him out there if they didn't have some confidence. But Sauce Gardner with what seems to be a calf strain. Just injuries are going to be huge. And to me, the biggest ones really are Armstead and Walker to follow this week. But Parker Washington matters for sure. He makes such an impact on special teams and as a receiver. And then the offensive line, it feels like you have the pieces to, figure out the puzzle on the offensive line against a Colts defensive front that's not been the best in football. Yes, they do still have some talent. No, DeForest Buckner will not be available, but it seems like they can piece that together a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit more about that offensive line, one particular piece of that offensive line to end the show, but continuing with positive vibes here, it does feel like to me that the pass rush for the Jaguars and the coverage have really kind of figured it out to be effective. And that's even in a game without Eric Armstead and Trayvon Walker, you still have Josh Hines-Allen moving around the formation, which that has really opened up his game a lot, in my opinion, hunting up those matchups, as they like to say it in Jacksonville and inside that building. But he's been on a tear, and a lot of that has had to do with moving around the formation, rushing against different players, and taking advantage of opposing offensive line's weaknesses. It feels like, again, as I said, the pass rush and coverage have really taken a step forward. The Jaguars, even though they still have plenty of off coverage, you have enough looks where you have guys up at the line that are dropping out, and you have enough kind of aggressiveness and stickiness from those corners right now where, yes, there's going to be times where if you're playing in off coverage, they're going to get 4 or 5 yards on a quick completion. But when they do, Buster Brown is firing downhill. Greg Newsome is coming downhill. The safeties, the linebackers. So it feels just more cohesive. And yeah, it probably should feel more cohesive against the Titans than it does against some teams. That's going to be true. The Titans are just not a very good football team. But over the last, since the bye, right, the Jaguars have had, 5 games since the bye week. And the pass rush really over the last month has been very effective. Over the last 4 games, they've been getting after it. They've been posting their highest pass rush win rates of the year. Again, starting with the Texans game, which I know a lot of people were not happy about the pass rush in that game, but it was more consistent than people think. It was just the Texans getting the ball out so quickly and the Jaguars not being able to kind of force them to hold it a little bit more. But Chargers, Cardinals, Titans, they've been doing a good job in the pass rush department. And I even though I think that the pass rush has improved, I think a lot of it just goes back to the way they're playing in coverage as well. So that's it doesn't feel like that's going away. We'll see over the next, 5 games? 5 games left. One thing that also feels like it's not going away, unfortunately, is the penalties. They have had a couple games here and there where they're very limited on penalties. They don't have a ton, but then you have a game like today that's a quick reminder that you can be one of the most heavily penalized teams anytime you go out there. They had 13 penalties against the Titans, and the Titans had a lot of penalties too. And some of this game was like, there was a lot of penalties that wouldn't normally happen because of all the chippiness, the personal fouls, the fighting, and all these types of things. That is true, but even without that stuff, I think the Jaguars were just too heavily penalized. And Daniel Griffiths posted a not a good stat, but a good stat. Not a good stat for the Jaguars, but a insightful stat. The Jaguars have the most penalties in football. They have the most offensive penalties in football. They have the 4th most defensive penalties in football. They have the 8th most special teams. Like, no matter where you're looking, there's too many penalties for the Jaguars. And they had a couple weeks in a row before this one where it had moved in the right direction. But this was like a total regression in terms of those penalties. And you got to be more focused. You can't have as many penalties. 100 yards of penalties, that can be a critical factor in losing an important game, whether that be in the regular season or, let's be realistic at this point, the Jaguars are probably going to make the postseason unless they have an epic collapse. Even if they can't beat the Colts at all and they can't beat the Broncos, they still have 8 wins with the Jets and Titans both at home on their schedule. They're probably going to get to 10 wins, and that's probably going to get you in the playoffs. And that's at minimum. That's if you don't beat the Colts at all in your 2 games against them and you don't beat the Broncos. So it looks like the Jaguars are probably going to be a playoff team, and you can't beat yourself in those moments. In Jacksonville, you have had so few opportunities over the last 15 years or since Shad Khan took over as the owner to really make an impact in the playoffs. And just being there is not enough. You have to do something when you get there. And so the penalties worry me a lot. The other thing that worries me a lot right now, really, is Walker Little. And I know he's got the concussion, all that stuff, but Jihad Ward made him look silly on an inside spin. And you see this almost every week where it just looks like Walker Little has multiple plays where it's like he completely forgets his fundamentals, forgets where he is. And in some games against dominant pass rushes like Danielle Hunter, Trey Hendrickson, others, it's like he's got no answer all game. But then in some matchups like this where it's like you're not facing a dominant edge force, he still has moments where it's just like, geez Louise, how does this happen? And that was one of them, and it led to a sack and Jaguars being in a bad situation, all that stuff. So he has just been so much worse than I expected. And that's pretty disappointing. But that's where I'm at. Feeling pretty good about things overall. Penalties are a major problem. And Walker Little is a pretty major problem. Didn't matter in this game as much, but against a better team, it can matter. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Y'all have a good one.